Hello and welcome to GEOSCOPE on Labour Social. I'm Graham Hughes, and above me we have Bowler Hatman. How you doing, Ollie?
I'm all right. Yourself, Graham?
I'm okay. I'm
Excellent.
okay. So
Excellent.
we've got a lot to get through tonight,
Oh, yeah, a
though, and
lot.
only an
We've got
hour
a
to
lot.
get through it all. So welcome, and welcome to everyone in the chat as well. First of all, Trump, has he just secured a massive win off the Supreme Court? Well, two of them actually. One of them that they're going to have a think about whether a president is allowed to murder people in office or not.
Yep.
Uh, that really shouldn't need to be thought about. I think that any question that could be answered correctly by a 4-year-old.
It's,
Um,
it's more a question of, can a US president eliminate his political enemies? Essentially,
yes,
doing a Putin, as I think
yeah.
it should be
Can
called.
the leader of America be a Russian dictator? And the other thing that SCOTUS said this week is that yeah, he has to be put on the ballot in states that don't want him on the ballot.
Yeah. So this is all to do with the Colorado case that was happening. They used the 14th Amendment, which is the insurrection clause that came in after the American Civil War, to say that, Trump had been insurrectionist, meaning that he does not fulfill the requirements according to the 14th Amendment to be on the ballot in Colorado. And there was numerous things now that if that went through, that might other states remove him from the ballot. In the reality of it, it would have only have been like blue states. I don't think any like proper red state, whether Republicans in control, would have removed him at all. But no, the Supreme Court has come out and said on this ruling, the 14th Amendment doesn't apply in this case, and that it's not up for states to apply this. That this is a federal case, so it's sort of very much brought in the usual clash you see in America of state versus federal power, and they've firmly said that this does not apply to the office of the presidency. It's not up for them to decide in this case. So
But
he's
but
back on the menu, as the Orcs would say.
looks like Trump's back on the menu, boys.
Menu.
Gotta say though that it is slightly hypocritical of the Republicans who are always going, "Oh God, we hate the federal government. The federal government is like the worst." Oh,
Mm,
do you know what the scariest words are in the English language? It's "I'm from the government. I'm here to help."
yeah,
Like that's the sort of attitude. Unless it goes their way, and then
yeah,
suddenly it's, "Oh yeah, the Supreme Court." That you can't argue with the Supreme Court, even though three of the people in the Supreme Court were put there by Trump. Three
hmm
of them. And how many were put there by Biden? None.
none. Yeah,
None.
and I still think that was the worst decision Obama ever did, allowing that to go through. He should have
He should put his foot
just
down.
appointed that Supreme Court justice, but
Well,
no, he decided to wait,
he should have just
decided to
taken.
make it to do it after the election, to leave it till after. And what happened with Trump when he had the same opportunity? Um, no, the Democrats absolutely folded and allowed him to appoint another Supreme Court justice. So this is why you have a conservative majority
Massive.
on the Supreme Court. And
Yeah.
what's worrying, of course, is remember in the year 2000, it was pretty much the Supreme Court who ruled on who won that particular presidential election.
With a little
Which is,
help from the one of the candidates' brothers, who at the time was the
yep,
governor of uh, Florida. That was Jeb
yep,
Bush. He
Jeb
was the brother
Bush,
of
and of course
George
Roger
W. Bush.
Stone as well.
Yes.
He incited the what's it called now? It's like the Leland riots or something like that, where he got a load of conservative people together and they stormed a polling station to stop the count because he said that they were trying to steal the elections.
My God. My God.
Yep.
So is there any hope? Like I'm just seeing what they're doing in the Supreme Court, and they seem to just be completely backing up Trump in everything that he wants to do. So if
Yeah.
it does come to it, like if Trump gets in and then starts behaving like a absolute fucking lunatic, um, the Supreme Court's got to go along with it, isn't it?
Yeah, they're not going to stop him, which is the really worrying problem. And of course, if any more liberal justices happen to die during that time, well, who do you think
Yeah.
Who do you think Trump's going to replace them with?
And don't forget, it's an appointment for life. So he's put
Yeah.
Amy Coney Barrett
Conan
in
Barrett, yeah.
there, and she's only 52 years old. So
Yeah.
she's probably got
Youngest Supreme Court justice, I think,
40
ever
years
elected,
in
I
her.
think.
And she actually had a pop at the rest of the court for not being Trumpian enough. That was like, I got no. This could be
Yeah,
way
that's
more
not worrying
Trumpian.
in the slightest, is it?
No.
Yeah, when you've got these people who have these lifelong commitments on this, it's it's a bit of a problem.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Simon Chandler in the chat. A GEOSCOPE, a 61-meter, 200-foot diameter globe proposed by Buckminster Fuller in the 1960s. Yes, it was. I did just plug the names of these shows up my arse, you know.
Is this one day going to be your question to James O'Brien?
Yeah, what was the GEOSCOPE? Yeah, it was proposed, but I don't think it was ever built.
You should do it. It'll be a good promotion. You can go, well, what is a GEOSCOPE? We also happens to be, a name of our very popular.
Yeah, and there's a type of carbon, isn't there, called Buckminster Fullerene after Buckminster Fuller, and it's shaped like a football. I think it's carbon 60 or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, someone will let me know in the chat. Someone with a more scientific bent.
Do you want to cover the other thing that happened last week? The Biden impeachment that has now completely collapsed.
Next on my list. So this is Biden trying to be impeached by the Republicans. It just can't do anything right, can they?
Awesome. Honestly, this entire scandal has been. I don't know what's the best way to describe it. Embarrassing, pathetic, hilarious. Resulted in Marjorie Taylor Greene showing pictures of, Hunter Biden's schlong in Congress.
Oh my God.
So imagine this if Miriam Cates, because I think that's her equivalent over here. Imagine if Miriam Cates was in a select committee and just said, can you see the travesty of this? Just literally pointing it out in as graphically as possible. Because that's what she's been doing in Congress.
Yes.
And it's just, what are you doing? Yeah. What are you doing?
So that's collapsed though, because there's no evidence at all. And the way they've gone after this is the stuff that Trump has done is seriously mastermind level of he's not a mastermind, but it's like mafia boss levels of criminality. It's Grand Theft Auto 5 levels of criminality. Yeah. It is stealing, embezzling, bribery, corruption, actions against the government that would brand him a terrorist if he was brown, but he's not, so apparently he's a patriot. Who knew? And what have they got on Biden? He bought a gun when he shouldn't have done. Remarkable that the Republicans are now saying that there should be some kind of, restrictions on guns.
I know the only times you'll hear the Republicans argue in such a favor.
Yeah.
Oh, what's even worse about this is this whole thing hinged on the Republican star witness. Their star witness was
is this Alexander Smirnov?
Yeah. So this was their star witness. This whole thing rested on him.
He speaks multiple languages. They said on Fox News, Ollie, sorry to interrupt.
Nope.
They said he's a trustworthy man because he speaks multiple languages.
One of them just, happens to be Russian.
Anyway, go on. Tell us about Alexander Vodka.
So this is your prime star witness. And he is making the claim, or he's bringing forward this evidence that, look, Hunter Biden used his sort of access to his dad to gain him prominent positions, particularly on a board called Burisma, which is an energy company. And Joe Biden, using nepotism, got him into this position. Now, this is kind of funny because this heavily applies to a lot of Trump's children, especially people like Jared Kushner and Ivana Trump, who would absolutely.
Jared's not actually his children, though. He's his son-in-law, right?
Yeah, son-in-law, yeah.
He's not actually his son, although if his son married his daughter, you wouldn't be that surprised, would you?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that shocking. But go on anyway. Tell us more about Jared Kushner.
So they made huge, huge, huge profits from being in office and benefiting off, Trump's name, which is exactly what the Republicans, through all this impeachment, have been trying to link this. They have been desperately trying to link this to Hunter Biden to a point where he actually turned up to one of these hearings in person and just sat there while the Republicans had a go at him. And while all the Democrats are like, well, hold on, if you want to question this guy, he's right there.
Yeah.
Well, let's question him right now. We can hold a vote. We can question him right now.
It's like Scott Evil. Come on, let's do it now. It'll be fun. We'll do it together.
Exactly. And he comes on, and he has numerous times said, I will testify, but I will only testify in open, because he does not want to testify behind closed doors, because the Republicans in the past have taken comments and quotes out of context and used that against Democrats, Republicans, and against their enemies. So he does not want to testify in behind closed doors. He's very well open to testifying. That's why he turned up to testify. They didn't take him up on that. But now the Republican star witness, the one who was saying, I can tie, Hunter and his father, Joe, together to see that they were committing crimes. Well, he's been arrested by the FBI for lying. And now it turns out he might be a double agent. So.
Oh my God. So there you go.
So, yeah, the entire impeachment has collapsed.
Yeah.
Collapsed beyond words. It's just been so hilarious to watch. This was like the number one thing like these MAGA Republicans want to do.
Yeah.
And now they can't talk about it because they know just how embarrassing it is for the rest of the party.
We'll move on. David Farrow's asking, do J.K. Rowling's latest comments come under your remit tonight? We usually talk about international politics on this show. I will mention it though. We'll be talking about this more on Friday on the Labour Social, and basically, J.K. Rowling had a go at a friend of ours, India Willoughby, and basically said that India was a man, which is the equivalent of using the F word against someone who's gay, or using the N word against someone who's black, or using the P word against someone who's South Asian. It's like, it's beyond the realms of acceptability. And anyone who's still now claiming that J.K. Rowling isn't transphobic can just take this tweet. Actually, it was a number of tweets that she targeted at India Willoughby. This is the richest author in the world, Ollie. Like, how does she not have anything better to do than to do this to India, who's lovely,
probably
by the
because
way?
she's got nothing to do. Let's face it.
It's just, I mean, if I had that money, I'd be making nice things happen for people. Do you know what I mean? I'd be like, that guy in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy who insults everyone in alphabetical order? I'd like to do something nice for people in alphabetical order. Do you know what I mean? Just a little surprise for them. That's what I'll do if I had that much money. But she just sits there on Twitter like someone with no money, like someone who still lives with their mum, in the basement, tweeting away, sitting on the toilet, like Trump on his gold toilet, going, I hate people. I'm going to be horrible. I'm going to ruin someone's day today. And you're like, what the hell? Anyway, so that's a bit of a tangent, obviously, but we were asked about it in the chat. But yeah, we'll be covering that more on Labour Social and the repercussions of it, because I think the one good thing that's come of it is no one can now say that J.K. Rowling is not a transphobe, because she clearly is. Anyway, right, so next thing on the list, Macron. Macron wants to march his troops up to the top of the hill.
Yep.
Ukraine.
This is quite worrying, because it wouldn't be the first time that France has gone NATO rogue, to say. They did it in Libya. They were the leading people to sort of start putting the no-fly zone over in Libya. And they said they were going to do that regardless, but NATO sort of quickly followed them into that. But I think this has very much become, and because of the consequences of what Trump said just a couple of weeks ago about not fulfilling NATO commitments, because it completely undermines the whole idea of collective defense. If you're saying, well, if I'm in charge, I might not come to your aid, completely undermines NATO, and it reinforces the idea that a lot of European countries are now, I think, more awake to, especially why Macron made these comments, is because we know that Europe now needs its own strategic and autonomy. It needs to be
Yes.
able to act independently of the US and be able to
And
rely
Canada
on
as
its
well.
own
I
defense.
think
Yeah,
Canada's in on this as well, aren't they? Because they're
yeah.
like,
Canada came out, I think, 2 or 3 days after that and said, "Well, actually, we might be in favor of this as well." So it has started a conversation in NATO about should NATO troops be in
I
Ukraine.
think there's a very strong argument for having troops training,
Mm,
because at the moment, if you're Ukrainian and you need to be trained to use equipment, tanks, fly these jets, whatever, you have to leave Ukraine to
yeah,
do that. So if we put
exactly.
NATO specialists in that could train the Ukrainians up, and I mean, people go, "Oh yeah, but then nuclear war." Look, Vietnam, there was Soviets, not in the same scale, obviously, but there was interference. In the Korean War in the 1950s, there was Soviet interference. It didn't start. It didn't make the Cold War a hot war, but
Yeah, they were just mercenaries. They
yeah, they obviously took sides. Definitely. Just to go back to the Buckminster Fullerene thing, we just had a comment saying from Simon Chandler saying Buckminster Fullerene is an allotrope of carbon, and it's C. I think he corrects himself later on. C60, yeah, carbon 60, which is football shaped. It's shaped like a football.
Oh,
Anyway, so Ollie's like, "What are you talking about, Graham?" Emma, thank you so much for the super chat. That's really kind of you. Thank you so much. I have to correct Ollie. You're getting corrected, mate.
no.
If you want to pay us to correct us, I'm so happy for you to do that. Quick, Ollie, make more mistakes. I had to correct Ollie. Hunter has done a closed deposition, and the transcript has been released. Comer walked out and didn't ask any questions. There you go.
Oh, I thought he hadn't. I thought he hadn't done. I thought he was refusing to do one, but no, I didn't realize because I thought that was why he was refusing to do one. Because I know he said in interviews and through his lawyer that that's why he was refusing to do a closed session in the thing. So yeah, I might have missed that. So yeah, no, thank you very much for that.
Cool. Anyway, so back to NATO. So Canada's backed them up, and now Germany's saying, "Is it all right if we have some nuclear weapons?" And
Yeah.
this is the point where I'm a bit like,
So I think before we go into the nuclear weapons, I think we have to sort of talk about because France has sort of clarified what they meant by that. Because Macron said that initially, and then their prime minister of France, his ally came out and said why I want to do this. So one of the things that they said they want to do is what you said, training, but
mm,
also to do more inland air defense. So NATO troops or French troops will be sort of manning sort of further inland air defense systems. And that would mean those Ukrainian crews of the air defense could then move to closer to the front lines. We've seen just recently in the past 2 weeks, they've shot down 14 Su-25s, which are the main Russian fighter jet. And the Russians rely on Western parts to build these. So
yeah,
every single one of those lost is one that is incredibly difficult that they cannot replace.
yeah,
And it is interesting to think that they are now starting to use more planes and jets because they might be running out of missiles or finding it more difficult to keep a supply of cruise missiles to build. This is why they've been using a lot of glider bombs deployed from these aircraft. So once again, that deployment would free up troops sort of elsewhere in Ukraine because I know this sounds silly to say, but Ukraine's a big country.
it is
Ukraine's a
very
very big
big,
country. Um,
eye-wateringly big.
and it's people don't realize, I think, that it takes a lot of troops all over here because you've got problems, of course,
Mm,
on Transnistria. There's 100,000 illegal Russian soldiers stationed in Transnistria. There's still problems, of course, with the border of Belarus because, hey, at the start of this war, that's where they came from. So Canada and France might go, well, actually, tell you what, we'll station that border.
Yeah.
If they come across, then they know they're going directly into NATO troops. It's not on the front line, but if they want to start something, you know, that's what they're going to run into first if they cross that border. But again, that would free up more troops from that Belarusian border, which again, very big border, to go to the front line where they're sort of more needed. So that's what I think the conversation is starting about. Where can we put NATO troops into sort of Ukraine where they're not going to be on the front line? They're not going to be directly engaging Russian troops, but there's a lot of stuff they can do behind the line. Potentially even providing engineering services, mechanical services for repair services. That will be something maybe NATO could talk about as well doing. So yeah, it's that's sort of the troop situation. But I think it's definitely started a conversation amongst NATO countries about what to do with that, and is that now something that they should do? I think I talked about on Labour Social. I talked about saying if we do deploy a deployment of troops, maybe we go east of the Dnipro River.
Yeah.
And maybe we go, right, you are not going to cross the Dnipro River. That is our red line. We're not going to allow you to take all of Ukraine. And again, that would free up more troops that can go, Ukrainian troops that can go to sort of the front line and help out there. But again, it's all up to sort of NATO and sort of what happens there and what these countries decide to do. And I think this has now started that conversation.
Yeah, it has indeed. Yeah, so yeah, it's a worry though, isn't it? I mean, people are
Yeah.
saying in the chat, what the hell is going on? Like, how did we end up here? Even
Yeah.
just
Well,
10
this
years
is
ago,
all
how
because
did
of
we end up
Trump.
here?
This is
Yeah,
all because of Trump saying that,
yeah,
because he's
yeah,
completely undermined the idea of collective defense. And
yeah,
November is a long time to hold your breath. And if he wins, a lot of bad stuff could happen on top of that.
yeah. I
And
know, I
this
know.
is why Germany now wants its own nuclear weapons, because currently they don't have their own nuclear weapons. They sort of, at least sort of them, shall we say, by the Americans, and it's the Americans sort of get to decide if they are deployed or not. But remember, if Trump's in office, he might decide, well, tell you what, I'm removing all of America's nuclear arsenal from Germany.
Yeah,
So is
which
it
he'll
any
do
wonder why Germany now
if
wants?
his Dark Lord Putin tells him to do that, then he will do it because he is completely under the thrall of Vladimir Putin in a really kind of grotesque way. It's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for America. I'm embarrassed for people who vote for such a worm of a man, such a beater, someone who just says, "Oh yeah, I'll do whatever Putin wants. I've got to check with the boss. I've got to check with the boss." With his little tiny hands moving about, and yeah,
Playing the accordion.
and people, when I've put stuff on Facebook about Trump, and then these Americans said, "Oh, it's got nothing to do with you. Why don't you mind your own business, or why don't you sort out your own politics first?" Ha 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 ha. I'm like, literally, mate. Britain could collapse into civil war, and it would not make any difference to America whatsoever. Might give them some ideas for good movies to make in the future. That's about it.
Yeah.
Like, if
Might be
America
a
collapses
problem
into
for
civil
Europe,
war,
but not America.
we're so fucked. It's silly, and I don't think a lot of Americans appreciate that. They
Mm.
like to swag around saying we're number one, but at the same time, they don't want the responsibility that comes with that power. I wish there was some kind of like pithy little slogan, catchphrase we could use in this situation about some kind of great responsibility, being coming with great power. But I can't think of it off the top of my head. Anyway, my spidey sense is failing me. But the last one on your list, oh god, we're only at half past, mate. We need to slow
Oh
it
well,
down.
we also need to talk about the intercepted phone call as well.
Yes, that's it. That much an intercepted
Yeah,
call. So
the
what is
yeah,
this about,
this is
Ollie?
oh,
I'm just going to sit
yeah,
back and let
this
you
is
talk.
so Russia intercepted a phone call between four between it was the head of the Luftwaffe and I can't remember who else was on the call, but it was speaking with someone else in Ukraine. And what they
Sorry,
were
the
saying
head of the
was,
Luftwaffe. The German Air Force.
Yep.
They're still called the Luftwaffe.
Yes, I
I would
think
have
they are.
thought they would have changed the name.
I like I say, I believe they're still called that, aren't they?
Okay, I don't know. I just whenever I
Um,
think of the Luftwaffe, I think of
yeah,
I think of the Blitz. Do you know what I mean?
but
It's
this is kind of
It's like
interesting.
Scunthorpe. Why haven't they change the name? Why haven't they
It's just,
changed the
yeah,
name,
just
Ollie?
that's it. Every 5 years, a town gets, or 10 years, or
Yeah.
at least a decade or so,
Well,
the
especially
town gets an opportunity to change
if
its
it's
name.
Scunthorpe or Clitheroe or Hull, do you know, Grimsby, just change the name. Anyway, go on. Sorry,
So
I interrupted your
this
telephone
this
interception.
phone call was about Germany potentially sending Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine,
What are they?
uh, and that will be quite big. That will be quite big
Are
if that
they
happens.
quite big? Are they?
Yeah, they are quite well.
What are
They're
they? Are they?
plane-mounted
Okay,
sort of aerial, sort of launched cruise missiles.
right.
So they would be able to sort of do that, which would give them quite a big advantage, especially in Ukraine at the moment. We've seen what they can do with storm shadows. Having that um, would be pretty good for them to do at this moment. You've seen just recently today they've sunk another Russian ship, sunk a cruise.
Yes.
That was protecting the Kerch Bridge, and if they do get those missiles, that's exactly what those missiles are going to be used on. So the part of this phone call that was released was, well, if we want to speed up delivery of these, we're going to have to send German technicians, German delivery people into Ukraine to be able to sort of set that up and do that more quickly. And he also said, we're going to have to do that just like the UK and the French have. So the UK has not confirmed this. France has not confirmed this. But according to
Mm,
the phone call, there might be UK troops and French troops in Ukraine helping the Ukrainians now in some capacity or some way, shape, or form. But yeah. And of course, Vladimir Putin threatened nuclear war. The first time he's done it in
yeah.
2024. So
Yeah. He does do that a lot, though. So
it
I
hasn't
mean,
been for 2 months.
yeah.
So
But
you know,
what? Okay, here's what I don't get, Ollie. Right, you've got all these billionaires like Musk and Zuckerberg and all that lot, and they're all buying these like doomsday bunkers, you know, or having them built inside of mountain layers. Do you know what I mean? And
mm,
they're gonna go there after civilization collapses, and I'm like, but I mean, you can stop it happening. Wouldn't it be better to use your money instead of building a doomsday bunker?
we're heading to the Fallout
You know,
timeline. That's what we're heading on. Vault Tech. Watch out for Vault Tech.
no, but like I don't get it. Like that, if everyone's fighting and no one's got any bloody food and we're having to eat rats, we're not going to be using Facebook.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to sell any advertising on Facebook because it won't exist because no one will be using it.
Mm.
I, I, I can't. I don't understand the business model. Like I'm obviously not.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not I'm a bit entrepreneurial, but I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a businessman by any stretch of the imagination. I don't get it.
It's it's insane to think that this is what we're sort of, talking about, but this is just the unfortunate reality of the situation we've got to look at, and you've got to take, sometimes, situations like this seriously. And of course, the rich, live in their own bubble. They have their own concerns, um, concerns of stuff we could probably never even understand,
Yeah.
just for the amount of sheer wealth that these people have. Um, I mean, the mind generally boggles if what I would do if I had that kind of wealth. I generally don't know what I would do, as you said earlier.
Would you go evil? Because J.K. Rowling seemed like a decent person until she got incredibly rich, and then she went evil.
Well, it wasn't really until the past sort of couple of years, and it seems to she's fallen in with a very, very um, turfy crowd, and that
It's like
seems
it's a
to
cult mentality, isn't it?
yeah, that
Well,
seems
I
to
mean,
what she's been pulled into.
so essentially, my dad's generation. He's a bit older than me mum. they very much connect being gay with abusing children in their heads. And so my dad would get very angry about gay people existing, right? And he'd have a little rant about it because there'll be someone gay on the TV, and he'd be like, "Oh, how dare this gay people person be on my TV?" And the reality was that it was hard to get him to understand that actually, there's no connection. But once they made that connection in their heads, it's like in America, if you think that an embryo is a human being, then any abortion and IVF, as we found out in Alabama, is murder because you're murdering a baby. And it's really hard to. And what the TERFs have done is they've put together this horrible idea that if you are a trans woman, and it's never a trans man, it's always a trans woman. If you are a trans woman, you are a sex offender. You're someone who will assault cis women. And
it's the same tactic just deployed for a new group of people.
A new generation but once that idea is in their head, that's it. It's absolutely sold. And they see the transphobia as like a form of feminism. It's a twisted, fucked up form of feminism, but that's what they see it as. But yeah, anyway, so on to other things. Luftwaffe bombed Stan Borman's chippy, and Graham hasn't forgiven them, says F. Tumstick. Fun fact, in 2006, right, I got on a flight from Manchester to Bangkok in Thailand, and standing in front of me in the queue was Ian Brown from the Stone Roses. And we got on the plane, and also on the plane was Oasis, so Liam and Noel, and it's just they hadn't split up at that point, and Franz Ferdinand, Alex and that from Franz Ferdinand, all on the same flight, flying to Bangkok for a gig, which I went to. It was brilliant. We got there, and the first night we were there, we're walking along, one of the roads in Thailand where they have all like the ping pong bars and all that kind of stuff, and there's all ladies sort of like hanging around and saying, "Hi, how you doing? Come into this bar," like trying to drag you in. And my mate like nudges me and he goes, "Is that Stan Boardman and Frank Carson?" And I turned around and they were just sitting there on this little table outside one of these bars in Pat Pong, and they're just sitting there, and we went over and I went, "Are you Stan Boardman?" And he went, "Yeah." And I went, "Are you Frank Carson?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, I said, "Do you mind if we buy you a drink?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, join us." And we ended up spending the night drinking with Frank Carson and Stan Boardman in Bangkok. Yeah, so that happened.
I once had a drinking session, believe it or not, with the guy who played Admiral Akbar.
Oh no! It's a trap! Fantastic. That's pretty cool. I love a bit of Akbar.
He's the only famous person I've ever met.
He's a Mon Calamari.
It's my only claim to fame that I've met Admiral Akbar.
Well, it was just a bit weird, like on the same day, meeting all these people, like in Bangkok, like flying to Bangkok. Anyway, that was a fantastic gig, by the way. It was called the Bangkok 100 or something, a festival. And it was just on the outskirts of Bangkok. And it wasn't until we turned up that we realized it was sponsored by 100 Pipers whiskey, and you couldn't get beer. I think they only had one keg of beer between like thousands of people.
What, so it was just all whiskey.
Well, yeah, but what happened was the barrier. There wasn't like a super fence like a Glastonbury. It was just like two sort of normal sized barriers that you have at the side of the road when there's a parade going past or whatever. And there was like, in parallel lines going around, and there was like guards sort of walking up and down to make sure no one's jumping over. Right, every time one of the guards, one of the security people turned around, all this money, all this like was it bat? It just started flying across one way, and all these cold cans of beer started flying back the other way. All holding up how many cans you want and how much it's going to cost. Yeah. And then the guy, the guard would turn around, or the security guy would turn around, and everyone would just be like this, just standing there at the fence like nothing happened. You've got a beer. You got a beer. Oh, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, Placebo played that gig as well, and Maximo Park, I think. Look it up. Anyway, so back to the
Oh yes, we've had
depressing
some more
reality
action
of
on the,
life in 2024.
we've had some more action on the Red Sea shipping. I don't know
Yes.
if you've seen
Have
this
they cut
happen.
some submarine cables? Was that them?
Oh no, this is in the Red Sea
Yeah.
for the shipping.
Yeah, I thought they cut some undersea
Oh, they cut some undersea cables. I hadn't seen that. 'Cause
Yes.
I know today
Cutting off a big
they've
chunk of
sunk a
the
ship.
internet. They have sunk a ship. And we don't
Yeah.
really know whether anyone was on board, do we, yet? Maybe you
I
do.
don't know. I haven't seen anything about casualties. So it seems that they did get off the ship, but this is one of those things now that the ship was carrying over 21,000 tons of fertilizer, that now creating
Oh,
a bit of an ecological disaster in the Red Sea,
yeah.
dumping all that fertilizer into the Red Sea, and of course, retrieval efforts are going to be, if not next to impossible, because of the Houthis. And they've also now said, if you want free passage, you're going to have to pay us. You're going to have a permit.
Oh, shit.
So,
Wow.
I think Egypt's going to get involved very quickly. I think because this is massively hurting their economy.
Yeah.
Since this has all started, passage through the Red Sea has dropped by like 60%,
Oh,
and
shit.
the Red Sea, not the Red Sea, the Suez Canal is a big part of the Egyptian economy.
One of the ships I was on was 24 hours late getting to its scheduled pilotage through the canal. So if you're on one of these ships, you have to pick up a pilot in Suez or the other end of the canal, and they will guide you through the canal. Because they were 1 day late, they got fined $27,000. So that was added to the cost of
Yeah.
their because that's a lot less than you were spending fuel going around Africa. Just
Which
goes to
now
show,
all these ships are,
yeah,
and it's overloading.
goes to
The
show
African
though
ports.
how much fuel is burnt on these things. Like the fuel tanks on one of the ships I was on was 6 Olympic swimming pools in size.
Oof, yeah.
That was one of the big Maersk ones, one of the big
Actually, you
Maersk
don't
ones.
really think about international shipping and what goes into it until you actually start to look at it,
Yeah,
and then you look at all the different ships, about how the crewed. So you might have a ship that's built in Greece, but it's licensed by, I don't know, Turkey, and then it's got a crew from
yeah.
um
Registered,
yeah,
in Liberia. It'll be actually owned by a Greek shipping magnate. It'll be
mm,
chartered by a French company. The staff will be recruited by a British recruitment company. It's
yeah,
like, the ships are a bit of an international effort, but it is concerning just how much fuel these things
mm,
burn. Obviously, it is better if you've got like a 20,000 TEU or 24 equivalent unit ship. It's got 20,000 containers on it. That's going to use less fuel than 20,000 trucks or 20,000 lorries. However, the amount that these things burn is just it's mind-boggling. Like the size of the engines are massive, and once they get their engine started, once they're out of port, they don't turn it off. So if they've got to make up time, if they've got to slow down because the engine goes at set speed, you can only gear it. Um, they'll go in the big loop. You're just wasting petrol. It's not petrol. It's like bunker fuel. So it's like
mm.
really, really dirty fuel that they actually distillate or spin on the ship itself. And international shipping. If only, Ollie, if only there was some way of traveling across the ocean, harnessing, I don't know, the power of the wind.
Yeah, I know, it's a magical device. Who knows when we'll invent such a
Yeah, I doubt you'd get very far with the
uh,
20,000 containers on your ship, though, with a few sails.
yeah. I think
But
that's the problem. I think just the loads that we're carrying now, you need a powerful engine. You can't rely on
yeah,
I think wind anymore, just for the sheer volumes that some of these things take. I mean, you've seen the pictures. There's the ship, and then there's just the containers piled high on top of the ship, like Jenga.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And you know that there's so much that goes into it that you don't think about. So the weight of the containers, and obviously there's empty containers. You can't have a bunch of full containers on top of an empty container. So it's a
yeah.
real puzzle. Like it's a job called a supercargo. That's what you're called if you're in charge of it. You've got to think about the weight distribution when the ship is tilting in storms and things like that.
Mm.
And if you have break bulk, I think it's called, cargo, which is stuff like flour and corn that's not in containers. It's just literally they just dump it out the silos into the ship. The ship opens up and it all gets dropped inside, and that can have effects. Like there's a thing with flour that if it goes up one way, it doesn't necessarily flow back again like water does because it's not water. And
Yeah.
sometimes it can cut, like literally the cargo can cause a ship to capsize. So they've got to take a lot of things into account when they're
Of course,
putting all this
well,
stuff together.
you'll remember during the pandemic, the big thing that caused international shipping at that point was cargo, the containers all in the wrong place,
Yes.
and that was a big problem
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, empty containers, nobody wants them. No one wants to take them. Why would you?
Yeah.
It's like, so yeah, it is mind-boggling the amount of, and the speed as well. If you you look at the ports that are all automated now, like in Brisbane, the speed that they can get those boxes off is just absolutely incredible. They have a whole area sectioned off. It's all automated. Humans aren't allowed. It's got like signs everywhere saying robots. No humans. It's a robots only area. Yeah, it's honestly the whole sort of thing about shipping is it's something that we just don't think about. But
Yeah.
without it, we'll die. I don't want to sound too dramatic about it, but
Yeah.
we would literally die. We could go for a few weeks without lawyers. We could probably go for a long time without doctors. I know that's horrible to say, but like if you don't get ill or break anything, you don't need a doctor, really.
Yeah.
You survive. We wouldn't survive a few weeks without shipping.
Reagan Leaks brought up a good point actually in chat. I just saw a moment at Haiti.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on in Haiti at the moment.
Oh, can we talk about that? But before we do that, can I just say a big thank you to Emma? Thank you. Who says she's taking her hat off to you, Ollie.
Oh,
there you go. Keeping up with everything. I just keep up with the UK and USA.
It is difficult to try and keep up with everything.
There's a lot going on. But I like this show because it allows us to break out of just UK politics. I know we talk about the US a lot, but let's talk about Haiti. Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. It's not had a very happy history since they overthrew the slave lords back in the 1820s and became the first independent state in the Americas. Sorry, independent. Actually, that would be America, wouldn't it?
Yep.
The second.
First country actually ever to suffer an international blockade.
Oh, really?
Because obviously when all the slaves got freed, no one wanted that getting out. So a lot of people refused to trade with Haiti for quite some time.
Wow. Anyway, so there's been a massive jailbreak in the capital, Port-au-Prince.
Not just one, two of the largest jails have been. This is a problem that I think stems back to, if you remember when we were talking about Colombia, the problem that they're having with gangs and gangs taking control, to the fact that they've now had to basically just start locking people up. And remember at CPAC, he was at CPAC, the president of the country was at CPAC saying, oh yeah, I've had to go out into the streets and just start locking people up for the smallest fraction. But the crime in Colombia is insane. It's at an insane level. And hey, he's reduced crime by about 60% by locking all these other people up and building a massive super prison to house all these people.
Yeah.
And I think when we were covering it last time on GEOSCOPE, it's a bit difficult to be in a position where you're like, well, there's all that problem with all that, that crime, but he sort of turned it into like a bit of an authoritarian police state. It's a bit like, which side do I root for? This is a bit difficult.
Well, in the case of
Um,
Colombia, I mean, that is such a sad story
mm,
because if it wasn't for Americans and their
mm.
absolute addiction to cocaine, it would be one of the most, well, I mean, it is one of the most beautiful countries in the world, but also one of the safest destinations for people to go
Oh,
to.
sorry, no,
It'd
it's
be
not Colombia. It's Ecuador. Was it
Ecuador,
Ecuador?
sorry.
Oh, I can't remember Ecuador.
Yeah, well,
I can't
they've
remember now.
been screwed over by
Yeah,
the the cocaine trade as
I'm
well.
I'm forgetting which country it was now. It was a while since we talked about it, but yeah. Like I said, go back, go check out that past episodes.
Yeah, when
See
we were
us
talking
talk
about
about it.
Ecuador, not Colombia, which isn't far, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's just over the border. But yeah, isn't there an old quote of like people who give up their liberty for security deserve neither?
Mm. It's
And
very, very. Oh, I can attribute it to you. Great
no, it's not
news.
me. It wasn't. I think it was Thomas Jefferson or someone. I've got some inkling that it was someone like that. But yeah, I mean, do you see the international community actually helping in Haiti or doing anything that would
Um,
actually alleviate the situation, or is it just going to be
Not
ignored like
yet.
until it festers into something major?
I can't see them getting into it yet. I think there's going to be a lot more problems. I think for Haiti in their future. We've seen Kenya. I think it's Kenya. Uh, send Want to send them 1,000 police officers to help them out
Yeah.
in this
Reagan
regard.
Elite saying US says no troops to Haiti as country reels from explosion of gang violence.
Yeah.
It's absolutely
Like I say, I
heartbreaking.
don't think at the moment they're Biden or anyone is
Yeah.
going to want to go to get send troops into Haiti. I can't see the US acting by itself. I think it's going to very much be a NATO force that has to go in.
Yeah.
Um, but it's who leads on that, and it's difficult to say where it will come from. I think unfortunately things can get a lot worse before um, the world sort of starts to turn its eyes on what to do with Haiti, because obviously you've got everything going on in Ukraine at the moment. You've got Gaza at the moment.
Mm.
Sounds like there's talks of a ceasefire now being discussed
Well,
and possibly being
yeah.
brought in. Although they have said, I think today, that they might have been slowed down a bit.
Yeah,
Um,
is Israel saying no ceasefire until you release the hostages, and Hamas is saying no hostages until you give us a cease until you stop shooting at us. So
yeah,
there's a bit of an impasse there.
yeah,
But yeah, Haiti has, I mean, it has a long history of being ignored or,
yeah,
like you said, blockaded. I'll give you an example. So Haiti is right next door to another country called Cuba. Well, not right next door. That's the Dominican Republic, the other way. But if you go the other way, if you head towards the setting sun, and you head west, you'll hit Cuba quite quickly, and they're not very far apart from each other. If you get on a raft, a makeshift raft, and you leave Cuba and you manage to get to Florida, you manage to get to the Florida Keys, you will be welcomed to the United States of America, where they'll say, "Yeah, fantastic! You've escaped communism. Please come and join us here in America, USA, USA." If you're from Haiti,
mm,
they'll push you back into the sea, to be honest with you, or you'll get deported back to Haiti. They've got no interest in you at all.
yeah.
Um,
I think this comes back to what we were talking about international aid and the importance of international aid. Um, because Haiti has just been a country, as you've said, just been so ignored for all this time, and I think that's really the root of all its problems. It's just a country that has just been continually being ignored, and
yeah,
until we take it seriously as sort of an international community and come together to think, well, um, how can we try and solve this?
yeah.
It does become a bit more of a problem about how you try and solve these problems.
This is this is something that we discussed on the show before, obviously. But if we continue to fail to support other countries,
Mm,
then the whole world gets pulled down by it. Do you know what I mean? Like the rising tide raises all ships, and we've got to start thinking this way. And the only time there's a weird thing going on in America at the moment because they're like, "Oh, we've got to give, we have to give this aid," and they're like, "Oh, hang on, is it humanitarian aid?" And the Republicans like, "Don't want that," and then no, it's military aid, and then people on the other side are like, "No, we don't want military aid. We don't want to be giving guns to people," and it's like there is obviously a huge difference between humanitarian aid and actually military aid, given different circumstances. But the idea that we take a country like Somalia, which is so important in terms of world trade, and if they were getting, hundreds of pirates coming out of Somalia and disrupting world trade, taking over cargo ships and things, then it affects us all. It's worth investing in these places, and it doesn't necessarily mean invading them, but actually giving them the structures that they need. And one thing that I always think would be a really good idea, and I think I read it in a book called The Bottom Billion a long time ago. I might be misquoting it. It might be for something else. But it said there should be a UN charter, like a UN ideal of a country that the opposition in these countries can strive for: free press, free elections, no discrimination against minority groups, no religious persecution, no persecution on grounds of skin color or ethnicity. And I mean, that would give people who are trying to make these countries better something to aim for. Say we're trying to get up to this point. But at the moment, we have systems in which the more corrupt you are, the more money you make. And guess what? In most countries, the president is above the law and can only be taken to the International Court of Justice if they stop being the president. So, Ollie, what are they going to do? Well, you're the president of Zimbabwe, and you have the option. You can either stay as president till the day you die, or you can spend the rest of your life in a jail cell. What will you do?
Well, you'd stay president.
Yeah. Can I stay in this palace, please? Because I like money. It's just like, so they commit these even more atrocities trying to stay in power, which is what we see with Putin and what we see.
And again, prime example has been Assad in Syria.
Yeah.
What was it? 2012, the Syrian civil war kicked off, I believe it was.
Yeah, that's when it really kicked off, because 2011 was the Arab Spring.
2024, and Syria is still in a state of civil war because they wanted free and fair elections, and Assad went, sorry.
BUFU Mike is saying, weren't Somali pirates only doing that as the territorial waters were overfished, basically starving them? Yes.
Yep.
That's exactly what happened. And it's why I've met two people who was kidnapped by Somali pirates. One was a chef on the boat on the cargo ship that I took across the Atlantic. His name was Shivas Regal. He was from the Philippines, obviously, and I think he told me that his dad was having to call him Shivas Regal or Johnny Walker, and he got Shivas Regal. And he was kidnapped for months, like literally months. And he said that actually, he said it's not Stockholm syndrome or nothing, but I do know a lot about the situation in Somalia, and I do have a little bit of understanding of why they were doing what they were doing. And plus, he said they weren't particularly horrible to him. The white people on board, they were horrible to them. He just shrugged. But it was. It's something where if the international community does not act responsibly, and we allow overfishing in a place that isn't being patrolled by a coast guard or a navy, because at the time Somalia had collapsed into civil war, this is the knock-on effects. We have to. It's like having a city and just not looking after it in any given country. Do you know what I mean? Just going, we can let that city go into managed decline. The knock-on effects of that echo around your country. It happens in a neighborhood. You have one house that's derelict. The broken window theory. You have one house that's all smashed up, and that brings down the whole area and encourages vandalism and littering and all this kind of stuff. And it's true. I mean, we've got to start thinking a lot more holistically about the planet and our place on it, especially with the threat that global climate change is put on top of us, just over the horizon. It's not even just over the horizon. It is here. We just had the wettest February on record.
Yeah.
Anyway, right, we've got to sign off in a minute. Have you got any good news stories for us?
I think on GEOSCOPE, or not on GEOSCOPE, on Labour Social, I talked about the Italians coming up with a new way for disabled people. They've created an exoskeleton for disabled people. I said I was looking sort of closely at that to see if that's going to help people. They look like they've said that they're hoping to get it ready by 2040. That might be some time away, but if you think about it, 2040 is not that far away. If you like to think about it in that term, so we could
years.
have some really good news on that front. I think that would be really good. That's being, and specifically that's being developed in Italy. So good on the Italians for doing that.
Good on you. Good on you. Have you got anything else? Because I've got some good news. Dan Wharton has been fired from GB News.
Oh yes.
Jonathan Ashworth has made a bet that the election will take place in May, general election. Rupert Murdoch's Talk TV has been taken off air.
Yep.
And will now be on the internet. And finally,
how long till GB News goes as well?
GB News' losses have surged after a spending spree on high.
4 million they make in ad revenue, something like that, and their running costs are like 46.7 million.
So
something like that.
The broadcaster says it's made losses of 42.4 million.
Yeah, they lose far less than they make. That is a company that cannot survive. The only reason it's being kept afloat is because you've got a lot of millionaires and billionaires just throwing money at it, and dark money that is flowing across from America, from like things like the Heritage Foundation and other various pro-conservative groups that are funding these things because they want to sort of fund things in the over here. So yeah.
It's but yeah, I'm trying to keep on the positive side of things in general. Life is a little bit difficult at the moment, I've got to say, but I am cheered by the fact that the Tories are doing so badly.
I'll tell you what is a good news story that we haven't covered. Greece passing the first Orthodox country to pass gay rights.
Oh yes, and France has changed its constitution to make abortion legal in the constitution, a constitutional right in France now, which is fantastic. And they're looking at changing the law in this country to do with abortion, because at the moment, if you have an abortion without a doctor and 2 doctors signing off on the fact that you can have one, it's actually a criminal offence. So So anyway, so I mean, good things on the horizon in places.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, especially for the Greece, because that's like I say, that's the first Orthodox country to actually pass gay rights.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive considering how far we think we've come in terms of those rights for sort of gay people in Europe and sort of but you look at countries like Greece and they've barely moved, and now that's just happened.
Well, they were quite progressive back in the Bronze Age. The old Greeks.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They were definitely up for it back then.
Oh,
and then Christianity came along and said, listen, you need now to follow a man who had, a group of 12 male friends who were fishermen. Hung out
just totally friends.
Unmarried, early 30s, and went round with long hair, didn't have a job, and told people they should be nice to each other. Obviously, it didn't last long because humans. But yeah, the fact that that's happened, and hopefully we're going to start seeing with places like Ukraine where you've got they're looking more to Western Europe now than they are to Russia. And
again, they're looking at passing more gay rights legislation as well.
Yeah.
At the moment as well. So that's another thing that's being advanced there on that front. So,
Putin up.
Yeah.
I think they should have a big gay army that just goes and like takes out Moscow. It'd be brilliant. Just glitter bombs.
I can see Scott now storming the Red Square.
Storming the Red Square. Looking fabulous. And David Farrow, someone else mentioned this. Corbyn is going to sue Farage. Yes.
Oh yes.
Yes, he is.
That'll be fun to see how that goes. I wonder how much Farage is going to cry about that, considering how much he still was crying at CPAC about losing his bank account, although he got it back.
Imagine Ollie that he does. He's already said this in his video on Labour Social today, but like, imagine if it's not just that he loses his millionaire's bank account. Imagine if he just loses all of his bank accounts. Like, he can't even get a NatWest bank account after this because he's literally got no money. But before we go, actually, I just want to make a point. Trump is owing $500 million. He's got less than a month to pay it now. And basically, he's offered $3 billion, I think. And they've gone, no. And so it does look like, barring some, I don't want to use the word miracle. What's the opposite of a miracle? What's something that's good that happens to a really horrible person?
Schadenfreude?
No. That's taking delight in something bad happening to a bad person. No, this is like when a good thing happens for a bad person, and you're like, no, I don't want that. So it's like a miracle, but it's a bad miracle.
Reverse miracle.
Yeah, it's like angels would make miracles happen, and then demons would make. We need a word for it. Anyway, unless barring something along those lines, which we don't have a word for, I'm sure someone's going to say it in the chat. He's going to have to start. I said he's going to start. I was going to say he's going to have to start selling off his properties, but no. The state of New York, or the city of New York, is going to start selling off his properties to make up the money, and it's going to be a fire sale, and it's going to be insane. And you can't move a building.
Yep.
You can't put that on the back of a truck and then get the hell out of Dodge, can you? He offered $100 million. He did. No, that was for the bigger one, but for the Eugene Cavill payments, which is about 85 million or something, he offered 3 million, and they were like, "Go away, little man, with your little hands." Anyway, so I'm just going to read a little bit on the chat. There was a Russian election ads, which is surrealist, LGBT fascism, and ends with, "I should have voted in March 2024." I don't really understand that, but yeah. There's a German saying, "The devil shits on the biggest pile." I don't really know what that means either, but yeah. Oh, what? No. That's when a bad thing happens to a bad person. What's the word for a miracle happening to a bad person? That's what I want to know. Undeserved serendipity. Tolkien used the word, I don't know if I can pronounce that, eucatastrophe. Eucatastrophe. Well, there you go. And Tolkien knows what he's talking about, because he was a cunning linguist, you know. Also, Mr. Tolkien told me. Anyway, right, Ollie, thank you very much for doing the show tonight. Super Tiny suggesting kafefi. Can we co-opt the word kafefi? Eddie's saying,
how will I get my cup of kafefi in the morning?
Miserical. I don't know how to pronounce that, Ernie. Miserical, like a miracle for a miser. Anyway, right. So I'll be back in the morning with Morning Brew, and then we've got Prime Minister's questions, kind of, and then we've got the budget. I think is directly after Prime Minister's questions.
Yep. 2 pence reduction in national income. So yeah, we save what
national insurance, not national income.
Yeah, national insurance. Sorry, yeah. We save what £420. I think it is. I think I've seen it reported. And then what cuts is that going to lead to?
Yeah,
'Cause
true.
he's gonna have to announce a lot of cuts. But we'll find out tomorrow.
So
We're
yeah,
all, I'm sure, holding
we'll
our
be here on Labour Social and broadcasting to you the whole thing. So we're going to do Prime Minister's questions, and then we're going to do that afterwards. And then yeah, if you're dying for some Phil action, he'll be back on Thursday with Morning Brew at 9:30. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for all the chats and the super chats and the bants and everything. And thanks so much to Ollie for giving up his time to talk to us tonight about what's going on in the world, because it is a bit confusing, isn't it? To say the least. But until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.
bye.